Hello and welcome to Ego Monk Presents Leading with Women, where we highlight women who have broken traditional gender roles and are now excelling in their own respective fields. I am Rahi Bhattacharjee and I am a part of Ego Monk's team. Joining us today all the way from Canada is Tara Sutton. She's an ex-war journalist who has gone into conflict zones like Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. She's currently dedicating her time to making films on refugees who are fleeing from extreme conditions. Thank you so much, Tara, for joining us today. Just to give our viewers a context, if you could start us off by telling us what exactly made you enter Fallujah in Iraq?
I think before I was a war journalist, I was just a journalist. And I got an opportunity sort of sideways because I was profiling a doctor and aid worker for a magazine in Canada, and she was sent to Iraq, and it was 3 months before the war started. And so I got in with her, and she was much more experienced at traveling to such places because she had an organization that worked with children in war zones. And so I learned from her and was sort of under her umbrella. And then once I got to Iraq, I quickly met a lot of the Foreign Press Corps and got the lay of the land. And then once I figured it out, I realized that I would be able to do it. You know, it didn't seem as daunting, right? Like anything, once you have done it, you know the steps. When you're outside, you just think, how on earth would somebody do this? And then I also really fell in love with the Iraqi people. I was just stunned by their hospitality and their resilience, and, you know, formed some deep, quick friendships. And so I don't know, I felt like I wanted to be there with people going through this.
So you did say that you had to do a lot of research, you had to understand the lay of the land, and you needed access. Do you think that as a woman, it was, what was the comparison? Is it easier for you to gain access?
I think it really depends on what you want access to. I think if you want access to the military, or you're being embedded with the military, I think that that may be easier as a man, simply because as a woman in that situation, you feel much more that you have to prove yourself. You're very aware of not wanting to seem weak. If you're on patrol, you want to keep up with everybody, you know. But if in terms of access to civilian daily life in countries where men and women live separately, right, it's so much easier as a woman because you occupy this very privileged position, I think, as an outsider, of being like almost a third sex, right? I'm able to sit and talk with men, but then I can go to the other side of the house and
also talk to the
wives or the, you know, because often they're multi-family homes, which a man would not be able to do. So I think that is really incredible, because, and also a reason why we need more women reporters, or at least an equal number of women reporters, because otherwise those women's voices are silenced, right? And it's not necessarily because anybody wants them to be, it's just simply that if men are there, they don't really have access to them. So then you're only getting one side of the story.
But in the Middle East, it is a patriarchal society, and you are from Canada, so it's a Western society. How did you transcend this cultural bias and then get people used to you?
Well, the Middle East is many, many, many things, right? First of all, it's made up of 18 countries. And within those 18 countries, you have a country like Saudi Arabia, which is, you know, incredibly oppressive to women. And then places like Jordan or Lebanon, where people have much more rights constitutionally. So I think that it's important to differentiate that not every woman there is living, you know, clad head to toe in black. And I think that there has been a stereotype that's mainly because of reporting that, women are terribly oppressed. And I think that there are obviously cases of that. However, I think that what that does is it sort of paints women as only ever being victims. And I think that any oppressed group quickly becomes, you have to become stronger and you have to become more resilient, right? So it's actually, I think the women there are probably stronger, right? So they're not, instead of victims. So, and then personally, I think that I'm always very aware of the fact that I don't know anything, right? I try to go into a place with the attitude of a child. And I think that my background helps because I grew up in about 6 different cultures. I don't have a cultural norm. There's no, this is the right way to do things. I'm always sort of like, oh, this is another way of doing things. So I try to constantly not make assumptions.
So what I'm understanding is that there are two kinds of reporting. One is where you're right there in the spot of action. There's gunfight happening, there's a lot of violence, bloodshed, etc. And then there's the other side, behind the scenes, sort of, where
Yeah.
you go and talk to the families and you ask them what they are going through in the war.
It's however, I think even when you're just hanging around, you're spending time with families, in the way that war is now, often something will happen anyway, because there aren't really front lines. There is, insurgent warfare, which means that things can happen anywhere. In Iraq, there was no front line. The battles were in the cities. So you're sitting with, a family talking about something, and then there can be an explosion somewhere, and then you suddenly are in a very different situation. But I did not want to go, for example, and be embedded with the military and really watch what you would call operations. And there is definitely a place for that, knowing, the armaments that are used and the positions. But that was never, to me, what was interesting. I mean, if I did do it sometimes because I would get an
But
assignment
that
to
is
do it as
not
a
what you
freelancer,
wanted to.
and so I'm not going to pass up work. And I think that you always want to try to, everything you do just adds to your understanding of the area that you're in, right? So as many different angles and perspectives as you can get, I think, is always beneficial.
You're also on the board for the Collateral Repair Project, which is a non-profit which assists refugees mainly from Syria and Iraq. It helps war victims also. So, if you could just give us a personal account of why you work with the organization and what are the goals of that organization.
Yeah, of course. So the Collateral Repair Project I have been working with them since 2010. I was living in Jordan, and I had 2 very young children, and I was not working, but I was very much still aware and obviously affected by the conflict that was going on at that time in Iraq. The war had not started in Syria yet. And I just felt that I wanted to try to do something to help, because I think that as much as you hope as a journalist that your stories will help, you don't have any clear way of knowing if they do. You're sort of trying to humanize people so that people on the other side of the world don't hate these unknown people. But you don't know, there's no direct result. You don't know if you helped. And I think that, you have a lot of guilt in a way, because you think you're making a name for yourself from covering people's suffering, and then you don't really know if it helped or not, even though that was my aim, right? So I looked around for an organization that helped refugees, and I like small grassroots organizations. I've done a lot of work with some larger organizations, and I wanted something that was very direct contact. And I found this place, which was in the part of Amman called Hashemi al-Shmali, which is an area where all the refugees live. And there was a very small organization there, and I was shocked because, again, most NGOs have their offices, in the part of town where all the embassies are, which is nowhere near the people that they're helping. Meaning if people want to go and ask for food, they have to take a taxi to get to the place, which may depletes their resources even more. And so I went and I started volunteering, and then I was asked to be on the board. And I just love it. To me, I think I've thought about this a lot, but I think another reason that I like it is because I feel that I'm around people. We have a shared experience, right? If I'm in Canada, there's no one around me that has shared the experience of conflict, specifically in specific places. And yet when I go into CRP, I start talking to refugees, I mean, I can be like, oh yeah, I remember that restaurant in Fallujah. And then somebody will be like, it got bombed. And we can kind of make these jokes, even though they don't seem like jokes.
Moving to the career of journalism, there has been some excellent work done by female journalists. We have had Betty Hurl, who has taken these amazing, stunning, and shocking war photography. But do you think
Yes.
this prevalent mentality that no, war reporting cannot be handled by women and it's just a man's world?
I think maybe from outside of the journalism profession, there is that idea, but I think that from within now, women have proven themselves over and over again. I think that as journalists, people are never surprised to see a woman anymore. I mean, even when I was in Iraq, I mean, I would say at that point, 2003, it was probably 25% women. And now, I mean, a lot of those women went on to become bureau chiefs of, the New York Times and the Washington Post or AP. And so I don't think any journalist is shocked to see a female covering conflict, but I think that in the public opinion, it is still considered, man's work.
Another huge issue is the pay gap. We have had organizations like the BBC where an open letter was written by the staff about
Yeah.
the prevalent wage gap. So, what are your views on that?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think we should be paid equally, and I think that transparency is important. And I think that men need to, we need to know what the men are being paid so we can realize how badly we're being paid. I also do think that we need to negotiate harder, right? I think that often women are so happy to be let in the door, we don't negotiate.
So, there is an article which I read where you actually said that you took inspiration from being a war journalist to being a mother, and that you actually compared the two, saying not really a comparison, but you kind of had takeaways from the field which you could apply to being a mother. So just walk us through it.
Yeah, that was a friend of mine who was editing a women's magazine had asked me, and some of the things I learned, I think was, I mean, the main one, and something I constantly try to teach my children, is really to trust their gut and their intuition, because that was a lot of how I survived when I was working. Sometimes you have to pick a taxi to drive you somewhere, and you just have to look. And I think that you can't describe why somebody's trustworthy or not. I also think that you need help, in anywhere that I work. I'm not working alone. I have a fixer with me who may be acting as a translator. I have a driver, and all of those people have so much information to give me because they, come from the place. And so I think that, other mothers, babysitters, who have experience should be listened to, take all the advice and help that you can get.
So, what would you tell women who want to go into conflict zones and become war journalists?
I would tell them to read as much as they can. Start finding reporters whose work they like and follow it. And then I think that, often the best thing to do is to just assign yourself. I wouldn't say like go into Syria, right? But if you were interested in that, you could move to Lebanon, or I wouldn't go to Turkey now, but a lot of people were in Turkey, right? Any bordering country. And then you can start to get the lay of the land. You can start to be around people that, are reporting there, and just find out what the risks are. You need a network of people, definitely. But I don't, being a war reporter, I don't think is necessarily something you want to do for your whole life, because it does wreak havoc with your life. it's not the healthiest career option, obviously. But I just think the mental toll becomes progressively more, you know, because I think I'm still recovering from trauma. I don't regret it. I'm a different person than I was before. And I think I'm probably a more compassionate and, I don't know, just have a bigger sense of things. But there's been an incredible amount of sadness and heartbreak. I've had friends die. Um, I've just witnessed a lot of really, really sad things. So, if you continue doing it and you never get a chance to process it, that's not a very healthy way to live, you know?
So your filmmaking still does focus on a lot of social issues.
Yes.
Is that a connect? That since you can't be there directly in the action, you still somehow want to help them in some way?
Yes, I realized that, you know, I couldn't keep up with the pace of news, but I could work on long form documentaries. You know, I often, when my children go to summer camp, I'm working on a film in Kenya now. So I just find ways to do it. It's my passion. Like I love filmmaking. I love, as I said, hearing people's stories. I think that, you know, my advice for any young women or men who want to get into journalism is just always say yes to opportunity, whatever it is. You never know. I mean, I used to do these shows working as a video journalist where I was filming in the back of ambulances. It was sort of like a precursor to reality television. And at the time, I thought, like, this is so beneath me. I want to be telling real stories. This is not important. You know, this is just going to be cut into this sort of schlocky stuff. And then I realized that, I mean, when I got to Iraq, and I remember I was filming something kind of gory, and I was like, oh, I'm used to this. This doesn't shock me, right? Because I did all that ambulance stuff. I've seen all the blood already, you know? So, but I didn't realize that a lot of things that you maybe think aren't exactly what you want to be doing later down the line are sort of the foundation you're standing on, you know?
That is excellent advice. Thank you so much, Sarah, for agreeing to talk to us and giving us a small glimpse into a very, very brave world. So, thank you, and we hope to see you again.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed it. It was great talking to you.